Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now, a podcast for women entrepreneurs and professionals who want to expand your innate leadership ability and influence, cultivate a culture of belonging and collaboration, develop others to perform at their greatest potential, and of course, live a life that is fulfilling, abundant, and impactful. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon. After nearly 14 years of climbing the corporate ladder as an HR professional and a leader, I became a corporate dropout and have spent the past several years helping organizations and leaders align their business goals with their talent strategies, strengthen their leadership bench, and create environments that employees actually want to be a part of. Tune in every Wednesday for insight, practical tools and strategies, as well as inspiring stories from other women leaders who have climbed the ropes and are now making a huge impact within their spheres of influence. Looking forward to chatting with you soon. Hello and welcome to another episode of She Leads Now. I am your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am thrilled to be bringing you another episode this week. Thank you for those of you who are faithful listeners, who are consistently reaching out to me with feedback around the show and around the guests and around the topics. I sincerely appreciate that. And if this is your very first episode, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. I hope you're able to gain some nuggets of knowledge through this particular topic that we'll be discussing this week. And of course, that you continue to come back week after week as a listener. So with that, let me hurry up and get into the topic here. So today's focus is really going to be around what it means to show up as an inclusive leader. So the way that we're going to attack this is really focusing on 6 key attributes for inclusive leadership. What does it look like? How does it show up? And how you can begin to apply some of these, if you aren't already, in your day-to-day, in your organization, in your teams, and even your personal life. So before we get into the meat of it, so to speak, I just want you to imagine for a minute, or just think, right, as you're listening to me, how many of you have ever played a sport or been on a team? As you think about it, many of us as kids in school, we were on some type of sports team or some type of activity. I used to do drill team, which was stepping in high school. I also did ROTC all 4 years of high school. And so ROTC, the Air Force ROTC at that, where I learned a lot of my discipline and was really excited and thinking about entering the military following high school. But yeah, things shifted. And I want to say I came to my senses because I don't know if I'm about that war life. But nonetheless, those are the teams that I was on. For some of you, you may have been a cheerleader. You may have been an athlete in some form. So as you're thinking through the team or the teams that you have been on throughout the course of your lifetime, I have a question for you. When we think about those days, right, it required a lot of commitment. Sometimes it required getting up early or staying up late or doing extra. But there was something about wanting to be part of this team or part of this organization or part of this whatever that we felt, okay, this is what needs to get done. And I want to be part of this. So I'll make the sacrifice. So think about it. What was it about the sport or the team that you were part of that really helped you stay committed and willing to put in that extra time, willing to put in the additional blood, sweat, and tears? Was it the camaraderie with you and your teammates? Was it the desire to win? Was it the feeling of accomplishment, knowing that you had tried your best and you left it all out on the field or all out in the room or all out wherever you were practicing or actually playing? Or was it really just simply the fear of letting, your coach down or possibly your teammates down? Whatever the driving force behind your individual commitment, most of us can really truly agree that at the end of the day, it was really about the people. The people on our teams are what made the real difference and what made it worthwhile, if you will, to make those sacrifices. The relationships, the friendships, the bonds that we created with those who understood us, had something in common with us, right? Because we were all on the same team, and to an extent respected us. That's what mattered most. And that's what kept us coming back. That's what kept us participating and or still keeps us coming back and participating. So whether we won or lost, right, at the end of the day, we had each other and we could count on each other for support, encouragement, and even the occasional kick in the pants reminder that we needed to either get our heads back in the game or be reminded of our greatness so that if and when we lost focus, we would get back. This experience, of course, and this dynamic, as we all know now, right, that we've been working in organizations for some time, this experience and this dynamic is not just limited to organized sports or teams. They exist in every single organization. And even if you are operating as a solopreneur right now, chances are you are still part of a team, whether it be in the form of a professional association that you're part of or belong to, whether it be part of a business mastermind that you've invested in, or even a formal coaching program that you're part of. Teams are all around us, right? It's a beautiful thing to be part of a team. It can also be stressful. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. It can be stressful. But every aspect in our lives, every arena, every space that we're in requires us to be working with others. So, what does that actually look like in organizations? And what does it take for leaders to step in and really embody inclusive leadership so that they can help make people feel valued, seen, included, and of course, treated fairly? Before I go into what those steps are, I just wanted to share, according to one HBR study, what leaders say and do makes up to a 70% difference as to whether an individual reports feeling included. 70%, that's a lot of influence. That's a lot of impact that we as leaders have on our individual teams, people who report directly into us, and even those who are perhaps maybe reporting into us indirectly. And this really matters because the more people feel included, the more they speak up, the more they're willing to go the extra mile, and of course, the more they're willing to collaborate, which at the end of the day just helps the organization, it helps the team, it helps lift up morale and everything else. So that's what we're going to focus on today. What are these 6 attributes from an inclusive leadership perspective that you can begin to embody in order to continue to build or cultivate a culture of belonging within your organization or within your life or within your community? First one up is visible commitment. Inclusive leaders demonstrate an authentic commitment to diversity. They challenge the status quo, they hold others accountable, and they make diversity and inclusion a personal priority. Now, we've been hearing about all of the performative organizations, performative leadership, performative messages and press releases that have gone out over the last couple of years, and there's actually no change. To really embody inclusive leadership, you have to show up. Like, it has to be a part of who you are and not just lip service. It's important that these individuals who are sharing, right, their commitment to diversity and they want change and they want to be an ally, there has to be some works behind it, right? People want to see you walking the talk, if you will. And if you're in a leadership capacity, and of course have been impacted over the last couple of years and you've wanted to make this change and you simply don't know how, stay tuned. I'll give you a little bit more insight on how to do that. But I think even just being honest with yourself and asking yourself, well, how much have I committed to, be it verbally or whatever, that I'm not currently living out or that I have yet to tap into? People are watching. People were watching before 2020, but people are always watching. Your employees are watching. Your diverse employees are looking to see if what goes out on social media and what goes out on the press is the same lived experience that they have with you each and every day. So as an inclusive leader, ensuring that what you say matches what it is that you do and how you show up. Next one up is humility. Humility is an attribute and a characteristic that we should all possess across the board, right? But when it comes to inclusive leaders, the way that humility shows up is that we admit to our mistakes and we create space for others to contribute, meaning that we don't, as inclusive leaders, have to pretend to know it all. And not only that, we're actually willing to ask for help in instances where we don't have all the answers. So one of the most effective examples I heard of this was actually from a recent guest, Mary Hendra, and she shared in an example of how she, on a regular, demonstrates this. If asked a question that she may not know the answer to, or she's not 100% sure, she'll just simply respond, "That's a really great question. I'd like to pull in, name the employee, into this conversation so that he or she can provide some additional insight." That's an amazing way of being humble, right? And saying, I don't know the answer, but I have someone on my team who knows that answer. In doing so, the truth is, it takes nothing away from you. It takes nothing away from your competence, nor your authority as a leader by letting others operate in their zone of excellence. Third one up is awareness of bias. And let's be honest, we all have some level of bias, right? And so inclusive leaders acknowledge their personal blind spots, the systemic flaws that do exist, and they actually work hard to ensure meritocracy. And so let me just pause here. Prior to early 2020, if you will, that was not as much of a widespread term. So I want to make sure that I can define that or give some more context to it. Its definition: it's a system, organization, or society in which people are chosen and moved into positions of success, power, and influence on the basis of their demonstrated abilities and merit. And so as an inclusive leader, it's not a reactive thing or it's not a passive thing. It really does require you to not only address and identify your bias, but also be willing to do the work to address it. And so, like I mentioned before, we all have blind spots, right? And I emphasize all. And as leaders, we just have to acknowledge that fact. And we have to take action in identifying and giving permission to individuals who will call us out, right? And support us in getting more awareness on how to limit the impact of those blind spots. Even the most emotionally intelligent, even the most empathetic and compassionate leaders can find themselves in the place where the compassion and the empathy is a blind spot for them. So I think it's very critical as leaders, and of course, as inclusive leaders, that we're not only just aware that we have blind spots, but that we have given permission explicitly to others to call us out when a blind spot is in the way that we cannot see it. And of course, the follow-up to that is you doing the work or you seeking out the support necessary, whether it's from the person who points out the blind spot or someone else, to actually help mitigate whatever impact that blind spot has had or could have. Number 4 is curiosity about others. Now, I know this seems simple, right? But think about it. How many of us make assumptions? This goes back to the bias as well. Inclusive leaders demonstrate an open mindset and deep curiosity about others. They listen without judgment and they seek with empathy to understand those around them. Curiosity is such an asset and superpower for those in leadership. In simply asking questions and listening to the responses, you can learn so much about others. And not only that, you can learn so much about yourself. This is when perhaps your blind spots might come up. This is perhaps when your Areas of ignorance might come up. So really coming from a place of curiosity and not assuming things about people. This one for me is one that I lean into. And I lean into it obviously because I'm a coach and that's what we do. And I also support in recruiting capacity. So I'm always asking questions to learn more about the person behind the person. But for me personally, I found myself having to tap into this, not just for myself, but in inviting others to do the same. So for those of you who know me or you've heard about my past and my history, I was born in Haiti, which is a country right off the coast of Florida, right? And I came here just shy of my 4th birthday. And so naturally, I went through preschool here. I had to learn English because I was fluent in Creole by that point, but I had to learn English. And here I am at the stage in my life and my career. I don't have an accent. If you came into my space or came into my home, like you probably won't see a lot of Haitian decor, but that is who I am. And oftentimes people just assume I'm African American, right? And so I find myself constantly having to be proactive in telling people, y'all, I'm Haitian. Or I find myself constantly having to correct individuals when they just assume, oh, you're African American, that no, actually, I'm Haitian. That's my identity. That's the culture from which I've come and I was born in, and very much a huge part of my identity, even though you can't see it externally. So I share that as an example for this particular attribute of curiosity about others, because oftentimes we can make assumptions. If someone is from a particular state or a country or gender or whatever, it's natural human tendency to make those assumptions or to allow our bias to come forth. But if you can come from a place of curiosity, it will allow you and support you in learning more about others and how to interact with them. Hey there. If you have been listening to this show for any amount of time, you know that I am extremely passionate about helping leaders, professionals, entrepreneurs grow, advance, and make an even bigger impact in the world. And with this passion as my driving force, I have created the Strategic Growth Accelerator. This accelerator is something that I've been using with clients one-on-one, and I've seen clients make amazing progress towards their goals and even crushed their goals and gone beyond what they believed that they were capable of when we first started working together. The Strategic Growth Accelerator is a 90-day program where you and I work together one-on-one to identify and to create a roadmap for you to achieve or exceed one specific goal. The Strategic Growth Accelerator is not just for anybody, and I don't mean that in a mean way. It is for individuals who know exactly what they want to achieve, but are stuck, aren't clear on the first step to take, or maybe they just want the support and the accountability of an experienced coach to come alongside them, to challenge them, and to push them beyond the limits they've created in their own mind. If that is you, I would love to work with you. I only have a limited amount of spots simply because I want to make sure that I am available and have the capacity to support you in any way that you need during the 90 days of us working together. Learn more about the accelerator and about the process at sabinegideon.com/accelerator. Again, that's sabinegideon.com/accelerator. I am so excited to really help you make 2022 your best year yet. If you have goals that have been sitting on the shelf or sitting in your mind or sitting on your whiteboard that you know you want to complete and or want to achieve this year, this is the program for you. Head over to sabinegideon.com/accelerator and sign up for a consultation for me to learn more about your goal and for us to decide if it makes sense for us to work together. So again, sabinegideon.com/accelerator. I cannot wait to work with you this year. See you inside the accelerator. Next up, number 5 is cultural intelligence. Inclusive leaders have awareness and respect for people from different backgrounds, unique attributes, and or values. They're attentive to others' cultures and are willing to adapt as needed. This goes along with the example that I just shared, but I have another example for you how this applies and or may show up. So I recently facilitated a workshop and it was for a group of leaders. And as we were going through some of these attributes and talking about inclusive leadership, one leader interpreted this, or as he was sharing, he interpreted this as meaning trying to get those on his team from different cultures to be more involved during meetings and projects. And it came from a very earnest place. And he was saying that was one of the action items that he could take away, was being a little bit more attentive and proactive in ensuring that all team members had a say in meetings and on projects. And following that, I respectfully challenged him, pointing out that perhaps the very reason why these individuals may have appeared less engaged is really due, in fact, to their cultural norms and their beliefs around what it means to be present at work. So rather than trying to get them to conform to his definition of engagement, try meeting with those team members one-on-one first to better understand their preferred communication style and offer suggestions on how they'd like to engage in meetings and projects. So with that example, what I wanted to highlight there is when it comes to cultural intelligence, yes, it's important to create a space where people from different cultures and different backgrounds can come together and can collaborate and be engaged, but also understanding what cultural norms might prevent someone from feeling comfortable with doing that, or what might create some uneasiness for them in operating in that space, and then adapting. Just simply asking what works for you? How do you want to engage? And then lastly, effective collaboration. So inclusive leaders empower others. They pay attention to diversity of thinking, psychological safety, and they focus on team cohesion. This ties back to the last couple of examples in a way. Bringing groups of people together to brainstorm, to work on a project, or to come up with a creative solution is a great way to foster collaboration. We know this, right? However, it's not the only way. In the remote hybrid environment most of us are operating in these days, most of our collaboration is taking place using technology, whether it be Slack, Zoom, Google Hangouts, or whatever tools your organization is leveraging. Prior to the pandemic, and of course now since the pandemic, there are whole teams who have never, ever, ever met each other in real life. So as a leader, you have an even greater responsibility to ensure your team members feel heard, they are valued, and that they also are given the latitude to contribute to whatever goal you're working towards in a way that is authentic and fulfilling to them. So those are the 6 attributes to lead inclusively. I just want to do a real quick recap here. First one up, having a visible commitment. Your visible commitment to diversity, your visible commitment to challenging the status quo, and your visible commitment to holding others accountable. Next up, humility. We all need to demonstrate more of that, but inclusive leaders, they're honest about their capabilities. They'll admit their mistakes, and they aren't threatened by including others, especially those on their teams who they have the authority, they have the power, and they have the influence to elevate. Inclusive leaders are aware of their own bias. And not only that, they have created space for others to call them out and support them in mitigating some of those blind spots. They are curious about others. They don't assume what people might be dealing with or what they may have experienced just because they come from a similar or related or whatever background or group or demographic. Number 4, they are curious about others. They ask questions, they listen, they take those learnings about others and apply it in the way that they interact with them. And they allow what they learn from others to perhaps challenge what it is that they think and what they believe. Number 5 was cultural intelligence. And again, cultural intelligence is really having respect for people from different backgrounds, not making the assumptions that we know all about this particular demographic because we know one person or we know two people or we read a book about a particular demographic, but really leaning in and understanding not just from those resources, but also from people how they want to engage and what is most comfortable and authentic for them. And then lastly, we talked about effective collaboration. And so that's leaders really empowering others, paying attention, ensuring that groupthink doesn't settle in when there's a more dominant group, if you will, and creating that psychological safety for those who may not be in the majority to be able to participate, engage, and contribute as well. That's what I have for you today. I hope some of this was helpful. Hope some of these examples resonated with you. And even as I went through these 6 attributes, that you are beginning to think through and doing that self-assessment to really understand and identify where you might need to develop, and of course, where you already are demonstrating strengths in those places. I would love to hear from you and learn how you're demonstrating one or maybe all of these in your organizations, in your teams. And as always, invite you to connect with me, send me a message on LinkedIn. My handle is Sabine Gideon, or you can shoot me an email directly. I respond to all emails at support@sabinegideon.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So again, if you're completely new, this is your first time listening and this was helpful, I invite you to subscribe to the show so that you get notified every week when a new episode is released. And if it really, really helped you, I invite you to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify, as it will help other leaders and or business owners find us and gain these nuggets as well. Until next time, have a fabulous week, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. If you found today's episode helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your business or organization, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon, that's my handle, and send me a private message, or feel free to go ahead and leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network who you think might benefit from this content. Lastly, be sure to check the show notes and the description below for links to resources, including relevant downloads, articles, and any upcoming training. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.